The business of operations management is difficult, particularly in large enterprises like banking, insurance, and other services companies with teams of hundreds and thousands around the globe. Now add in recent pandemic forcing the workplace to change forever. Managers and employees are under immense pressure to get work done, while also finding ways to balance performance and well-being. The complexity is building, and it can be difficult to find the answers. This podcast, AO On Air, partnered with Active Ops, is designed to help identify areas that will help employees, managers, and senior leaders find solutions to the challenges within operations management. The future of work will take all departments, such as HR, IT, and Ops, aligned along with a steady dose of innovation to succeed. We'll bring you topics, thought leadership, and simple plans to help lead your teams into the future of work. A hybrid work world that will learn from one another and truly act globally, breaking down the silos of older management models for new ways of working. Welcome to the journey. Now let's begin.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining AO On Air. I'm your host, Michael Kupst, and I'd like to welcome you all to this podcast. I'd like to get straight to the topic because it's an important one that our customers ask us about constantly. So we're interested in understanding how we can help people in their digital transformation, not actually executing the digital transformation, but how to sustain that transformation over time, which involves a bit of selling throughout the organization what needs to happen. So, IT and operations leaders are experts at building a business case to attempt and move into a digital transformation of whatever type. That may be robotics, it may be AI or blockchain or what have you. And they can put that business case together and then they move forward and they usually get pretty immediate responses and immediate feedback about the transformation, whether that's a percentage gain in productivity or they were able to do certain aspects about employee engagement, et cetera. So they know how to measure those. What happens over time, though, is that digital transformation is persisting and people lose interest to go focus on the shiny new thing that may be out there in the organization. And those leaders in operations and IT need to figure out a way to sell that transformation as a sustainable project. Because if they stop sustaining it, what happens? Do they lose those benefits or do they stay the same? And more importantly, are they prepared for the next transformation? So one of the things that our customers ask me quite a bit is how to help them market internally a transformation that has had immediate results or had good results, and there's a reason to sustain it over time because it may be readying the organization for other change. And so, but they don't know how to sell it because they're IT or they're operations people, and they need help branding, if you will, the transformation to make it a successful, sustainable project. So with that, I wanted to bring an expert in about branding because I'm not one of them. So I wanted to bring in Arnold Huffman, who's the CEO of Digital Yalo. Arnold has led his tribe of marketeers from a very small organization to a big digital agency, full-service agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia, with operations also in Cleveland, Ohio. Digital Yalo has won many awards, one like the Up City's Top Digital Agency in Atlanta, which is very, very nice award, among others. So let's meet the man behind the soul of Digital Yalo. Welcome, Arnold.
Hey, Michael. Good to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, and I gave through a brief introduction for you, but I'm sure it doesn't do justice to your agency. Maybe you could start us off with just a bit about your agency and yourself, maybe?
Yeah, sounds good. So as Michael mentioned, we're based here in Atlanta. We've been growing steadily over the last 3 years, but when I got into starting my own business, very important, I think, germane to this conversation today is the notion of a name and a brand and how do you represent yourself. And the key there is really coming up with something and creating something that's going to stick, has a little personality, and is something that you can use as a lightning rod to get people's attention. So for us, YOLO actually as a word means soul in Fiji. And for us, that is embedded in our approach of how we do our work with our clients. So we have an approach that uses the lens of film, art, music, and sports to come up with the ideas that we create for our clients. The reason we use film, art, music, sports is because those are elements that are relatable in everybody's everyday life that they can associate to or have some kind of affinity to. And so we want to bring those elements and ideas into helping clients with their brands, their communication, their representation to their customers. So that's kind of how what makes us tick and how we use film, art, music, sports, and what makes us a little bit different than some other agencies. And for example, when we do a creative conversation with our clients, we talk a lot about what's the essence and what's the attitude we want the output of a project to be. And we go through an exercise called the soul song, which is really designed to identify that emotional center of the output of what we want to create for our clients, and use that as a way to drive the creative and drive the communication of what we want to put forward to the audience, and make that different. So that's an aspect of how we use film, art, music, sports, and what that means as far as YOLO and soul for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you take those elements, film, art, music, and sport, and you add the attitude component that you just mentioned, that's certainly a direction. As you think about business marketing and inside of a company, those may apply, they may not apply depending on the different culture. But if you were to say there's 2 to 3 specific things to think about when you're taking on a branding project, where would you say that these 3 elements need to be met?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, before you kind of delve into the elements, is you got to have the right attitude in terms of you want to create something that's memorable, that has a personality to it. And as you're doing that, as the leader of this program, you have to be the one that's most excited about what you're going to create and what you end up creating. So because you're going to be the driver and the lightning rod and the face of that brand. So think about that as you think about how you want to put your mark on what it is you're about to go, communicate and unleash to the organization. The approach to delving into that is one that we call the 3 C's, which is communication, content, and channels. Thinking of those 3 elements as the core pillars of what you need to accomplish to bring that brand to life, that personality that you're looking to create, are very important. So communications is the first piece of what is that story? Why is it important? Why are people going to pay attention? So that's step 1. The content then is how are you going to tell that story in terms of visuals, graphics, any other elements that are going to be the communicators of that story. And then the last piece is channels, which is really around where are you going to place this? How are you going to put it in front of people, or as I like to say, on the airwaves for folks to take recognition of it. So those are really the core pillars of how to get started and thinking through what could be, a large, complicated, potentially even a long process of communicating the success of your digital transformation and giving it a personality and sustaining the excitement and interest around that for however long you need it to.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's good advice both externally and internally. But as we talk about internal champions of a project, they tend to be probably very good at building a PowerPoint and very good at building a spreadsheet that says we're going to get this ROI in this amount of days or this amount of months or years, et cetera. And that's how business people are trained to think, right? There's a return on investment in 6 months. And so consequently, when they hit that, they kind of feel accomplished, if you will, but that sustainability after that. So knowing that we're talking to people that are PowerPoint builders or Excel spreadsheet masters, I mean, how would you advise them, or where should they start? Because it's not about building the numbers; it's about building the experience, as you mentioned earlier. So where would you suggest they start?
Yeah, so that first step around the communication of what is the story you want to convey is the important piece, right? And so what do you want people to take notice of? What value is that going to, why are they going to take notice of it, and what value are they going to get from it? So there's a process that we like to go through that we call the message house that helps kind of hone that story in a unique way with the right language that really cuts to the heart of getting folks to recognize that. And so once you have that, you kind of have the basis of why are you doing this? What does it mean, and why will people pay attention? So with that, then you can move into the more creative elements that take you beyond PowerPoint and take you beyond, even email. We're typing up an email about why this is important. And this is where you start to explore kind of more personality, some kind of a mark or logo, that really represents that program. And as people see that and as people recognize that over time, it becomes the magnet of people know, oh, this is about our digital transformation program. Let me see what's happening next. So having that kind of the right name and the right mark or logo for the program emanates from or comes out of kind of that message house exercise, which helps really instantiate the story and then put you on the path of coming up with the creative elements that will help people draw their attention to the program beyond just the story.
Well, you mentioned something there that I didn't really think about asking you, but it's an interesting concept of the message house that an internal audience, when you assemble people that are part of an internal team, how would you recommend a champion or a business leader go about identifying who should be a part of that message house? You know, it certainly the people that did the project are, undoubtedly experienced in what the product does or the transformation is all about. But how would you suggest reaching out to other areas in that message house kind of concept?
Yeah, I think leadership is going to be an important factor. The stakeholders having it's not so much about them being in line with the story as much as getting them excited about what the story is and having them on board with what that means. Because at the end of the day, you want the program to be represented in totality for the company and the greater good of the organization, both leadership, kind of mid-level management, and all of the personnel. So I think touching on all three of those layers and getting folks from leadership, mid-management, and at the personnel level all involved is helpful, because now you're understanding what value or where people will put value depending on their role and their level in the organization.
Yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of these transformations, when you think about the news, they say that robots are going to replace everybody and no one's going to have a job after they're done infiltrating our society. We know that that's not true. They're usually there to augment what humans are doing. But there is a sensitivity around transformation projects that they could be managing people out of the business or reallocating resources, et cetera. How would you suggest a leader building this brand message address some of those sensitive topics?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to the empowerment and the opportunity that putting these types of programs in place is going to create for the overall organization. Because creating better efficiency and creating better abilities for the company doesn't mean we don't still need people and we don't still need a lot of people or good people in the right seats, right? It's about really putting the right people in the right seats and giving them the tools to be successful, to do their job even at a greater level. So I think it's really focusing on the capability that it offers and affords and the opportunity it offers and affords to all layers of the organization, which goes back to the point about thinking through creation of the message house and who you would interview and gather data points from, touching on all layers of top to bottom throughout the company.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Digital Yalo does a lot of external projects where you're helping companies go out to launch a new product, et cetera. Have you done projects for an internal use case like this where the marketing is more for the employees and not so much the external audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So larger organizations typically are the better scenarios for that, because they have lots of employees dispersed around the country, lots of employees dispersed around the world. So how do you bring the organization together, especially for a topic like digital transformation, which likely is going to touch all facets of the company, both north and south and east and west. So we've done that working with our clients. Again, I think the process is very similar, whether it's internal or external, of the 3 C's: communication, content, channels, and then looking at putting that together and then starting right like we talked about here at the top with a brand, a name, and some kind of logo or mark with personality. So we worked with a large communications provider that they wanted to create an internal website that they wanted all of their internal personnel to use going forward. And so we created a name called Bolt, and it had like a lightning bolt type logo, because the notion was in the space that they were in is that everything's moving fast, right? Lightning fast. And so we wanted this website and this communication to represent that same attitude to the internal employees. So that was the kind of the name and the logo, and had a unique mark to it. That then led into kind of the design of the website, where we wanted to bring everybody to continuously communicate updates and information and content related to this initiative. And then there was also other things like training, continuous newsletters that went out monthly with updates about what's happening around the program, and even swag. So swag items were designed and went out for production and brought back in and then distributed to the employees, so that they had something to remind them of this new initiative and the importance of it. And so whether it's coffee mugs or socks or hats and different things like that you can use to really get the name, logo, and the importance of the program to stick.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned Go Bolts, and Active Ops recently did a roadshow in Tampa, and we saw Go Bolts everywhere, but I think it was referring to the Tampa Bay Lightning and their recent Stanley Cup, of all things. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about PowerPoint being a mechanism that business owners know, and Excel and other communications. I thought your point about email was spot on. So there's some people that can make a great point in an email, but telling that to a broader audience that needs to different channels. So how would you recommend somebody look at the different channels that you mentioned? You have communication channels, et cetera. Where should they start with that? Yeah,
I think the creating of the assets, right, the content of what you're going to use to tell that story is an important factor. So, rather than somebody just typing an email or creating a PowerPoint and hoping that it gets circulated, things like taking the core 5 or 6 or 8 elements out of that and creating an infographic, for example, is a much punchier way to get people's attention and to see and read and notice the key facts that you want them to take into account. So, things like an infographic, other graphics and visuals can support that as well. And it's kind of the tone and theme that you want to carry through all of that. Once you kind of have those assets defined, then you really move into the channel distribution, and whether that's physically mailing socks to everybody with lightning bolts on it, or a newsletter that goes out on email, again, properly designed to fit and support the brand logo and the name and the initiative itself. Internal organizations, especially large companies, have things like Chatter or Teams, and maybe even using Slack, that you would create separate channels on that are used to communicate these types of initiatives as well. So, they're kind of take an inventory of the bill of materials of ways that you could communicate and look at which ones you think are going to be most effective to your different audiences. And it could be, again, looking back at the layers of the company from top to bottom, might have different tactics that you would use for the global personnel versus, say, leadership or divisional leads and things like that. So there's lots of ways, both digital and non-digital, to get in front of those folks, and just kind of building that bill of materials or that inventory of what is available, and being able to then deploy your assets on those depending on who your target audience is, which is another key component of understanding what you're going to send and how you're going to send it as based on your audience.
So with all of that, and you think about the channels and the communication, the message, so we've talked about some of these leaders may not be equipped to run a marketing campaign like that themselves. Where would you say that they should start, within their company or without? How do they start a project like that to get help mainly?
Yeah, identifying help is always important. So, I think there's a couple of things, especially internally, like I just mentioned, this bill of materials in terms of ways, more specifically with digital, how you would talk to folks is going to your IT group and seeing what is available, what is provided from them in terms of being able to create a new Slack channel, for example, or having your own page on the internal SharePoint drive, if you will, or something like that, right? Like, what are those capabilities? So finding out what's available to you from your IT team is a starting point. Another starting point, especially large global organizations, have an internal communications team. There's a designated leader for internal communications, because things like HR and benefits and other things like that are programs and initiatives that are communicated from the top down that folks are in charge of delivering. And so you could go talk to them and see how they get that information out and the approaches that they take, hear from them what's worked with their audiences, that organization's employees to date. So that's another group. Separate from that, internal communications there's certainly a marketing department. If you need other graphics, visuals, icons, photography, right, they typically would have access to a wide range of those types of things that you could maybe incorporate or make use of in your program or campaign. And then the last option or another option is, if you have a budget for your overall program, you could look externally. If you're looking for new, fresh, or different ideas to bring that program and communication of that digital transformation to life, you could reach out to an organization like ourselves and partner with us to put something together that would help drive that.
Yeah. There's another resource that we sometimes overlook, but sometimes just challenging teams, our team members, if you will. You find creativity that you didn't know existed in some cases. I've seen some videos and some PowerPoints even that showed up and said, who did this? And no one knew there was kind of a budding flower in their team waiting to burst out there. So.
Yeah, I would chalk that up to almost like a crowdsourcing situation amongst your team, right? I think a great example of that, for those who are aware of this story, is Accenture. Prior to being Accenture, was Andersen Consulting, and when Andersen Consulting was going to become its own company, they didn't go out and hire a fancy branding agency that does names like that. They had an internal competition. Now they had 80,000 people to tap into to do so. But from a crowdsource standpoint, put the contest out there and had a significant award for somebody if they won. And the winner was this gentleman, I believe he's from Europe, I think somewhere in the Scandinavia area, was the one who came up with Accent the Future, which is what Accenture combined that statement down into one word means.
Yeah, very good. I didn't know that story either before, so gives new context to that. So any closing thoughts or suggestions for people taking on a marketing project for a transformation that they did a lot of hard work to deliver, but now they need to go sell it to executives or to the people in enjoying the transformation?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is be excited about it, right? Be proud, be excited, put a lot of energy, have energy that you're going to take into it. Because that will come across the page as well, right? In the messaging, in the visuals that you select, right? You want that excitement to come off the page, come off the digital page, however it's being delivered to folks, and get those folks really excited about it as well. So that would be number one, is bring the excitement, bring the energy to it. Second one, I would say, is have fun with it, right? It's not a chore, it's not a uphill battle. It's really, you've done the hard work actually. Now it's time to have some fun with it and really trumpet it and get not only yourself, but also your team the recognition that they deserve for accomplishing or getting to this state and where you guys are in that transformation. So that would be third. And then keep at it would be the third point, right? Once you start and once you kind of announce things, that's not the end of it, right? You want to keep this momentum going. And in order to do so, back to point one, keep the energy up, right? And keep thinking of new ideas and different ways to keep that at a high clip and at a high level so that you make that impact and you get the excitement that you want from your audience.
Yeah, great advice. Good suggestions too. So just as we wrap up, if anyone wanted to reach out to you directly or your organization, how would they find you?
Yep. So you can hit us up at www.digitalyalo.com. It's YALO. You can Google that as well, and you'll find us. And then on our website, there's a variety of things that we do. You can fill out any one of the contact us forms there, or you can email me directly at arnold.huffman@digitalyalo.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Arnold. I have one further question for you that we may have to edit out for you, but who's going to win the NBA final?
Oh, well, I'm rooting for Chris Paul. He's been in it for a long time. So he, I think, deserves one. He's done, he's lived this life as stand up and as a leader as anybody has in the NBA for the last 15 years. So I think he definitely deserves one. Giannis is young. He's got many years left, so he'll win one eventually.
Thank you very much, Arnold, for joining. It was a great input on the topic of marketing an internal project. We thank you for your insight and your tips. For everybody that enjoyed watching this episode, we thank you for joining, and also hope you picked up a few things that will help you market your project. It's of the utmost important. Spotlighting your innovation and your career and your team's accomplishment is very important. ActiveOps is always here to help you. You can find us always at activeops.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn, and many of you are connected to relationship managers and our team members, so reach out to them locally for help. But we're glad that we could bring this to you and hope you found at least a laugh or some useful content out of this. So the last thing is stay safe, work hard, but most importantly, enjoy the journey, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
ActiveOps is a management process automation company servicing global enterprises with large numbers of people engaged in clerical administrative work. If you reduce what our software does to it enables our clients to more precisely balance capacity, which is really hard to do both consistently and at scale. We have about 165 people in 7 offices around the world, and we have about 80 enterprise clients. Our customers are insurance companies, banks, outsourcers which service that type of community. They are too big to fail organizations, which is really important in terms of the persistence of our client base. And our software supports them providing globally significant infrastructure, your credit card payments, your the check clearing systems, the kind of things that we all take for granted but have to work in society.